The flour sack slipped from Olivia Barrett's trembling fingers and burst open across the general store floor, creating a white cloud that settled like snow over her worn boots, while every customer in Henderson's Mercantile turned to witness her shame. "Can't even read the label," Martha Henderson announced from behind the counter, her voice carrying through the store like a town crier. "Says sugar right there, plain as day. Now look what you have done, girl." Olivia's cheeks burned scarlet as she knelt to scoop the spilled flour back into what remained of the sack. Her fingers worked frantically, but the damage was complete. White powder coated the floorboards, her dress, and her pride. She had asked for sugar because Mrs. Pritchard, her employer, needed it for preserves. The sacks all looked identical to her, rows of brown paper with mysterious black symbols that might as well have been ancient hieroglyphics. 23 years old, and cannot read a single word, another woman whispered to her companion, not bothering to lower her voice. "What kind of upbringing produces such ignorance?" "The kind where your father drank away every cent and your mother died when you were 8, Olivia thought bitterly. "The kind where survival meant working instead of schooling, where putting food on the table mattered more than learning letters." But she said nothing, just continued her futile attempt to salvage the flour while her vision blurred with unshed tears. "Leave it," Martha commanded. "I will have my husband sweep it up. That will be $4 for the ruined flour, plus $1 for the sugar you actually needed." $5, nearly 2 weeks of wages from her position as a household servant for the Pritchard family. Olivia's stomach churned as she counted out the precious coins from her small purse, placing them on the counter with shaking hands. She took the sugar sack that Martha thrust at her, gripping it like a lifeline as she hurried toward the door. "Some people just are not meant for civilized society." Martha's voice followed her out onto the wooden boardwalk. Shoshone City, Idaho in the spring of 1876 was a town still finding its footing after the mining boom had faded. The streets were a mixture of established businesses and abandoned storefronts, respectable families and rough prospectors who had stayed after the gold played out. Olivia had arrived here 6 months ago, fleeing a worse situation in a Montana mining camp, where the foreman had decided her employment should include additional unwanted duties. She had walked for 3 days before a freight wagon gave her a ride, landing in Shoshone City with nothing but the clothes on her back and a desperate need for honest work. Mrs. Pritchard had taken her in, though the elderly woman was demanding and paid poorly. Still, it was a roof over her head and meals, even if they were usually the leftover scraps after the family ate. Olivia slept in a small room off the kitchen, barely large enough for a narrow cot, and worked from dawn until late evening cooking, cleaning, and managing the household tasks that Mrs. Pritchard's rheumatism prevented her from doing herself. The inability to read was a constant source of humiliation. Recipes were impossible without memorization or careful observation. Shopping required either Mrs. Pritchard's written instructions, which Olivia had to show to shopkeepers, or the guesswork that had led to today's disaster. She lived in constant fear of making mistakes that would reveal her shameful secret, though clearly it was no secret at all. Olivia walked quickly through town, keeping her eyes down to avoid the stares of those who had surely heard about the incident by now. News traveled faster than wildfire in a small town. She was so focused on reaching the Pritchard house on the edge of town that she nearly collided with a massive figure emerging from the hardware store. "Steady there," a deep voice rumbled as large hands caught her shoulders, preventing the collision that would have sent her sprawling. Olivia looked up and up, her breath catching at the sheer size of the man before her. He stood well over 6 feet tall, with shoulders so broad they seemed to block out the sun. His arms, bare beneath rolled-up sleeves, were corded with muscles that spoke of hard physical labor. Long, dark hair, nearly black, hung past his collar, and several days of beard growth shadowed his strong jaw. His eyes were a striking pale blue, startling against his sun-bronzed skin. "I apologize," Olivia stammered, stepping back quickly. "I was not watching where I was going." The man studied her with an intensity that made her want to squirm. His gaze took in her flour-dusted dress, her red-rimmed eyes, and the sugar sack clutched to her chest. Something flickered across his rugged features, an expression too quick to identify. "No harm done," he said, his voice gentle despite its depth. "You all right, miss?" "Fine, thank you." Olivia moved to step around him, but his next words stopped her. "Heard some unkind talk in there just now." He gestured toward the mercantile. Folks in this town can be cruel about things that are not anyone's fault but circumstance. Olivia's spine stiffened. She did not need pity, especially not from a stranger, no matter how imposing his physical presence. I must go. Good day, sir. She hurried past him before he could respond, her face burning with renewed embarrassment. Of course he had heard. Everyone had heard. By tomorrow, the entire town would be talking about how stupid Olivia Barrett was, the serving girl who could not even read a simple label. Mrs. Pritchard was waiting when Olivia entered through the kitchen door, her thin face pinched with displeasure. You took an extraordinarily long time for such a simple errand. I apologize, madam. There was a delay at the store. Martha Henderson's boy came by 10 minutes ago, told me all about your little spectacle. Mrs. Pritchard's lips pressed into a disapproving line. I will be deducting the cost of that flour from your wages, naturally. Such carelessness cannot be tolerated. But I already paid for it, Olivia protested, then immediately regretted speaking up. Then perhaps you will be more careful in the future. Now get started on dinner. Mr. Pritchard will want his meal promptly at 6, and you have wasted half the afternoon already. Olivia bit back further protest and moved to the stove, setting the sugar on the shelf before reaching for the potatoes that needed peeling. Her hands moved automatically through familiar tasks while her mind churned with frustration and despair. She was trapped in an endless cycle of ignorance and humiliation, and she could see no way out. That night, after the Pritchards had eaten and retired to their sitting room, Olivia cleaned the kitchen by lamplight. She was scrubbing the last pot when a soft knock sounded at the back door. Visitors never came to the kitchen entrance, and certainly not at this hour. Wary, she dried her hands and cracked the door open. The mountain man from that afternoon stood on the back step, his large frame somehow seeming even more imposing in the darkness. He held a bundle wrapped in oilcloth under one arm. I apologize for the intrusion, he said quietly. I am Nathan Zimmerman. I have a cabin up in the high country, come down for supplies a few times a year. I cannot imagine what business you might have with me, Mr. Zimmerman. Olivia kept her voice low, conscious of the Pritchards in the next room. I heard what those women said to you today, about reading. He shifted his weight, looking almost uncomfortable despite his imposing size. I know what it is like to be shamed for something that was not your doing. If you have come to offer pity, I do not want it. Not pity. Nathan's blue eyes were steady and serious. Instruction, if you will have it. Olivia's heart stuttered in her chest. What do you mean? I can teach you to read. Been doing a lot of thinking since this afternoon, and it does not sit right with me, the way folks treated you. I have books up at my cabin. I have time. If you want to learn, I will teach you. Why would you do that? Suspicion colored her voice. In her experience, men did not offer help without expecting something in return. Nathan seemed to understand her wariness. My mother was a school teacher back in Missouri. She believed everyone deserved education, regardless of circumstance. She taught me to read before I was 5 years old, and she would have taken a switch to me if she knew I stood by while someone was mocked for not having the opportunities I did. He paused, then added, I want nothing from you except the chance to honor her memory. She passed 4 years ago. Something in his voice, a raw honesty, made Olivia hesitate. She studied his face in the lamplight, looking for signs of deception or ulterior motives. She saw only an earnest directness in those pale blue eyes. I work from dawn until late every night. Mrs. Pritchard keeps me very busy. I will be in town for another week, getting my supplies together and doing some trade. I could come by after your work is done, teach you here if there is a place. The Pritchards would never allow it. Then we meet elsewhere. There's an old line shack about a mile north of town, near the creek. Nobody uses it anymore. I checked with the land office. We could meet there by firelight if you were willing. It was improper, scandalous even, for an unmarried woman to meet a man alone. But Olivia's desperation outweighed her concern for propriety. The thought of finally learning to read, of never again experiencing the humiliation she had endured today, was too tempting to refuse. How do I know I can trust you? Nathan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small leather-bound book. This was my mother's Bible. It is the most valuable thing I own. You hold on to it while we have our lessons. If I prove untrustworthy in any way, you keep it and never speak to me again. Olivia took the Bible with trembling hands, feeling the worn leather, the weight of years and sentiment. No man would give up such a treasure lightly. When? she asked. "Tomorrow night. I will have the shack set up with some light and books. Come when you can get away." After Nathan left, Olivia stood in the kitchen holding the Bible, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and hope. She was taking a tremendous risk. If the Pritchards discovered she was sneaking out to meet a man, she would be dismissed immediately. If the town found out, her reputation would be destroyed, though she reflected bitterly that she had little reputation to destroy. But the alternative was to remain ignorant forever, trapped in servitude, dependent on the mercy of people who had shown her precious little of it. The next evening, Olivia finished her duties with trembling hands. Mrs. Pritchard retired early with a headache, and Mr. Pritchard fell asleep in his chair as he usually did after dinner. Olivia slipped out the kitchen door into the spring darkness, her shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders. The walk to the line shack took 20 minutes through scrub grass and pine trees. The night was cool but not cold, and a half moon provided enough light to see the path. As she approached, she saw the warm glow of firelight through the shack's single window. Nathan had indeed prepared. The one-room structure used by ranch hands during cattle drives had been swept clean. A small fire burned in the stone hearth, and Nathan had arranged 2 upended crates as seats near the flames. Several books were stacked carefully on a third crate serving as a table. "You came," Nathan said, rising from where he had been tending the fire. Relief was evident in his voice. "I almost did not." Olivia remained near the door, still uncertain. "I'm glad you did." He gestured to one of the crates. "Please sit. I promise you are completely safe. I gave you my word, and a Zimmerman does not break his word." Slowly, Olivia moved to the makeshift seat. The fire's warmth was welcoming after the evening chill. Nathan settled onto the other crate, keeping a respectful distance between them. He reached for one of the books, a small primer with a worn cover. "This was mine when I was a boy," he explained. "It starts with the alphabet. Have you learned any letters at all?" "I know some. I recognize my name when I see it written, and a few common words, but I never learned to sound them out properly." "Then we start there." Nathan opened the primer to the first page, angling it so the firelight illuminated the letters. "This is the alphabet. 26 letters that make up every word you will ever read. Some of them you likely recognize already." His finger, large and calloused from hard work, pointed to the first letter. "This is A. It can make different sounds, but the most common is ah, like an apple." For the next hour, Nathan worked through the alphabet with patience Olivia had never experienced from any teacher. When she struggled with a letter, he found different ways to explain it. When she successfully identified one, genuine pleasure crossed his rugged features. He never raised his voice, never showed frustration, never made her feel stupid for asking questions. "You are a natural student," he said as they finished going through all 26 letters. "You will be reading full sentences before you know it." "How long did it take you to learn?" Olivia asked, hungry for any reassurance that this monumental task was possible. "I was very young, so it is hard to remember. But my mother always said that adult students often learn faster than children because they understand why it matters. Children learn because they are told to. Adults learn because they want to." "I want to more than anything," Olivia admitted quietly. "I'm so tired of feeling helpless and stupid." Nathan's expression grew fierce. "You are not stupid. Stupidity is different from lack of education. Stupidity is refusing to learn when you have the chance. Everything I have seen tells me you are intelligent and determined. Those qualities will serve you well." His words warmed something inside Olivia that had been cold for a very long time. When was the last time someone had spoken to her with such respect and encouragement? She could not remember. They worked for another hour before Nathan noticed Olivia struggling to keep her eyes open. "You are exhausted. We should stop for tonight." "I need to practice," Olivia protested, but she could not stifle a yawn. "And you will. Take the primer with you. Look at the letters when you have time. We will meet again tomorrow night if you can manage it." "You will be here every night this week?" "Every night you want to learn," Nathan confirmed. "And after I go back to my cabin, we can work something else out if you want to continue." The ride back to town was quiet, both of them lost in thought. When they reached the edge of the Pritchard property, Olivia turned to Nathan with genuine gratitude. "Thank you. You cannot know what this means to me." I think I can. His smile was visible even in the darkness. My mother used to say that teaching someone to read was giving them wings. I never fully understood until now. Olivia clutched the primer to her chest as she slipped back into the house. She hid it under her thin mattress and lay awake for hours, her mind racing through the letters she had learned, practicing them silently in the darkness. The pattern continued for the rest of the week. Olivia worked through her days in a haze of exhaustion, stealing moments to study the primer when she was certain the Pritchards would not catch her. Each night, she walked to the line shack where Nathan waited with endless patience and encouragement. They moved from letters to simple words, then to short sentences. Cat sat on mat, Olivia read slowly on the fifth night, her finger tracing each word. When she reached the end, she looked up at Nathan with such joy that his breath caught. I read it. I actually read it. You did. His voice was thick with emotion. You are reading, Olivia. Hearing him use her given name sent a strange flutter through her chest. At some point over these nights by firelight, he had stopped being a stranger and become something else. She found herself noticing things about him that had nothing to do with reading lessons. The way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the gentleness in his large hands as he turned pages, the deep rumble of his laugh when she made a small joke. The way he listened to her with complete attention, as if her words mattered. Tell me about your cabin, she said during a break from studying. What is it like in the high country? Nathan's face softened with clear affection. It is beautiful. Quiet in a way town never is. My cabin sits in a meadow surrounded by pine forest. There's a stream that runs year-round, cold and clear. In spring, wildflowers cover the meadow like a blanket. I have a good-sized garden, chickens, and a milk cow. I hunt and trap for meat and furs to trade. It sounds lonely. Sometimes, he admitted, but peaceful too. After the war, I needed peace. You fought. Olivia had noticed scars on his arms, marks that suggested violence in his past. For the Union. Saw too much death, too much suffering. When it ended, I could not go back to Missouri, to civilization. Everything felt too loud, too crowded, too angry. So I came west and built a place where I could breathe again. Do you ever regret it? The solitude? Nathan was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. I did not until recently. Lately I have been thinking that maybe I have hidden long enough, that maybe there are things worth coming down from the mountain for. The way he looked at her when he said it made Olivia's heart race. She saw something in his eyes that both thrilled and terrified her. This mountain man with his gentle hands and patient teaching was looking at her as if she mattered, as if she was more than a clumsy serving girl who could not read. On Nathan's last night in town before returning to his cabin, he brought a different book to the shack. It was a collection of poems, the pages yellowed with age. My mother's, he explained. She used to read these to me when I was small. I thought maybe you would like to try reading something beautiful, not just primers for children. Olivia opened the book carefully, treating it with the reverence it deserved. The words were more challenging than anything she had attempted, but with Nathan's help, she slowly worked her way through a short poem about springtime and new beginnings. When she finished, tears were streaming down her face. What is wrong? Nathan asked, alarm in his voice. Nothing is wrong. Everything is right. Olivia wiped at her eyes. I just read poetry. Me, the stupid girl who could not even read a flour sack label. I read poetry. Nathan moved closer, his large hand covering hers. The touch sent warmth flooding through her. You were never stupid. You were just waiting for someone to show you the way. You showed me more than reading, Olivia whispered. You showed me kindness I have never known, patience, respect. You deserve all of that and more. Nathan's thumb traced gentle circles on the back of her hand. Olivia, I need to tell you something before I go back to the cabin tomorrow. Her heart was thundering so hard she was certain he could hear it. What? These nights with you have been the best of my life. Watching you learn, seeing your joy and determination, talking with you by firelight. I came to town for supplies and found something far more valuable. He paused, his blue eyes searching hers. I found you. Nathan. His name came out barely above a whisper. Da, I know it is too soon. I know you have no reason to trust a man you met only a week ago. But I need you to know that when I go back to my cabin tomorrow, I will be thinking of you. And I will be hoping that maybe, when you are ready, you might consider coming to visit. No obligations, no expectations. Just a chance for us to know each other better." Olivia's mind whirled. A week ago, she had been trapped in a life of drudgery and shame. Now, a kind, handsome man was offering her something she had never dared dream about. But fear held her back. "I work for the Pritchards. I have nowhere else to go." "I'm not asking you to decide anything tonight. I'm just asking you to think about it. I will be back in town in a month for some business with the land office. If you want to continue lessons, or if you just want to talk, I will be at the hotel. The decision is yours, always." That night, as Olivia walked back to the Pritchard house, her mind was in turmoil. She lay awake until dawn, thinking about Nathan's words, about the impossible possibility he offered. The next morning, exhausted and distracted, she burned the breakfast porridge. Mrs. Pritchard's shrill voice cut through the kitchen. "This is completely inedible. What is wrong with you, girl?" "I apologize, madam. I will make a fresh batch immediately." "You have been utterly useless this past week, distracted, slow, making careless mistakes." Mrs. Pritchard's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Where do you go at night?" Olivia's blood ran cold. "Nowhere, madam. I'm here every night. Do not lie to me. I heard the door these past several evenings. Mr. Henderson mentioned seeing you walking north out of town after dark. What are you up to?" "I just needed fresh air. I have trouble sleeping sometimes." "Fresh air," Mrs. Pritchard repeated acidly. "Or meeting some man, more likely. I will not have loose behavior under my roof. You are dismissed. Pack your things and be out by noon." "Please, Mrs. Pritchard, I need this position. I have nowhere to go." "You should have thought of that before sneaking around at night. I want you gone." 2 hours later, Olivia stood on the street with her few possessions tied in a bundle. She had $17 to her name after Mrs. Pritchard had deducted for the ruined flour and the burned porridge. The boarding house charged $5 a week, which meant she had perhaps 3 weeks to find new employment before she was completely destitute. She made her way to the hotel, her pride warring with desperation. Nathan had said he would be there this morning before leaving for his cabin. She found him in the small dining room, finishing breakfast. When he saw her with her bundle, understanding and concern flashed across his face. "What happened?" Olivia explained in a quiet voice, aware of other diners nearby. Nathan's jaw clenched with anger. "That is my fault. I should have been more careful." "It is not your fault. It is mine for taking the risk." Olivia straightened her shoulders. "I will find other work. There must be someone in town who needs help." But Nathan was already standing, tossing coins on the table for his meal. "Come with me." "Where?" "To my cabin. I have plenty of room. You can stay as long as you need while you figure out what you want to do." "I cannot do that. It would be completely improper." "More improper than starving on the street?" Nathan's voice was gentle but firm. "I am not proposing anything inappropriate. You can have the cabin. I will sleep in the barn. You will have privacy, safety, and time to consider your options without pressure. And we can continue your lessons if you want." Olivia looked up at this mountain man who had already given her so much. Trust did not come easily to her, but everything in Nathan's honest face told her she could rely on him, and the alternative was grim indeed. "Just until I figure out what to do next," she said finally, "however long you need." The ride to Nathan's cabin took most of the day. They traveled on his wagon, loaded with the supplies he had purchased in town. The road climbed steadily into the mountains, following narrow trails through dense forest. Olivia had never been this far from civilization, and part of her marveled at the wild beauty surrounding them. Massive pines reached toward the sky, their branches filtering the sunlight into shifting patterns. Birds called from hidden perches, and once they spotted a deer watching them from a clearing. Nathan pointed out landmarks as they traveled, clearly comfortable in this wilderness. He handled the wagon with easy competence, and Olivia found herself stealing glances at his profile, at the way his powerful forearms flexed as he managed the reins, at the way he seemed completely at peace in these mountains. "Not much farther now," he said as the sun began its descent toward the western peaks. They emerged from the forest into a meadow that took Olivia's breath away. Nathan's cabin stood near the far edge, a solid structure of hewn logs with a stone chimney. Nearby were a barn, a chicken coop, and a small vegetable garden just beginning to show green sprouts. Mountains rose on all sides, their peaks still white with snow. A stream glittered in the fading light, its musical burble carrying across the meadow. "This is your home?" Olivia breathed. "For 4 years now, built most of it myself." There was quiet pride in Nathan's voice. As they drew closer, Olivia could see the care he had put into the place. The cabin was well maintained, the barn sturdy, the garden neatly fenced against wildlife. This was no rough trapper's shack, but a real homestead, built to last. Nathan helped her down from the wagon with easy strength, his hands spanning her waist. The brief contact sent warmth flooding through her, and from the way his eyes darkened, she thought he felt it too. But he released her immediately and moved to begin unloading supplies. "Let me show you the cabin," he said, carrying several crates toward the door. Inside, Olivia found herself in a single large room that served as kitchen, living area, and bedroom. A stone fireplace dominated one wall. A bed covered with quilts stood in one corner, a table and chairs in another. Shelves lined the walls, holding dishes, tools, and an impressive collection of books. Everything was clean and organized, surprising for a man living alone. "It is not fancy, but it is comfortable," Nathan said, setting down his burdens. "You take the bed. I will get my bedroll and set up in the barn." "Nathan, I cannot take your bed." "You can and will. I have slept in far worse places than a barn, believe me." He moved around the cabin, pointing things out. "Cooking supplies are here. Help yourself to whatever you need. I will bring in fresh water from the stream each morning. There is a necessary outback behind that stand of trees for privacy. If you need anything at all, just call. I am a light sleeper." "You have thought of everything," Nathan shrugged, looking almost embarrassed. "I wanted you to be comfortable." They spent the rest of the evening unloading the wagon and settling Olivia in. Nathan proved to be an excellent cook, preparing a simple but delicious meal of fried salt pork, beans, and cornbread. As they ate, he talked more about life in the mountains, about the rhythms of the seasons and the work required to be self-sufficient. "It keeps me busy," he said. "Garden in spring and summer, harvest in fall, prepare for winter, hunt year-round, trap in winter. Cut wood, maintain the buildings, care for the animals. There is always something needs doing." "Do you trade your furs and goods in Shoshone City?" "Sometimes. There's a trading post about 10 miles east that I use more often. The owner is fair and does not ask too many questions about why a man chooses to live alone in the mountains." After dinner, Nathan built up the fire and pulled out the primer. "Unless you are too tired, we could do a lesson." Olivia was exhausted from the emotional upheaval of the day, but she was also desperate for the normalcy and comfort that their lessons provided. "I would like that." They sat near the fire, and Nathan opened to where they had left off. But tonight, Olivia found it hard to concentrate on the words. She was intensely aware of Nathan beside her, of his presence filling the cabin, of the incredible kindness he had shown her. This man who owed her nothing had given her everything. "You are not focusing," Nathan observed gently. "We can stop if you're too tired." "I'm not tired. I'm overwhelmed." Olivia set down the book and turned to face him fully. "Why are you doing this, truly? You could have just taught me to read in town and been done with it. Why bring me here? Why upend your life for a woman you barely know?" Nathan was quiet for a long moment, his blue eyes reflecting the firelight. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "Because from the moment I saw you in town, covered in flour and trying so hard not to cry, something in me woke up. Something I thought died in the war. I have spent 4 years hiding in these mountains, telling myself I was content with solitude. But the truth is, I was just scared of caring about anything or anyone, because I had seen too much loss. Then I heard those women mocking you, saw your courage in the face of their cruelty, and I knew I could not walk away. And this past week, teaching you, watching you bloom with each new word you mastered, I realized I do not want to walk away. Not now, not ever." Olivia's heart felt too large for her chest. "Nathan, I know I am not much of a catch. I'm a mountain hermit with a dark past and rough manners, but I'm honest, I'm hard-working, and I swear to you that if you gave me a chance, I would spend every day trying to be worthy of you." "Not much of a catch?" Olivia repeated in disbelief. "You are the finest man I have ever met. You treated me with kindness when the whole town mocked me. You gave me the gift of reading without asking for anything in return. You opened your home to me when I had nowhere to go. How can you possibly think you are not worthy?" Nathan reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face with his large, calloused hand. "Then maybe we are both better than we think we are." When he kissed her, it was gentle and reverent, nothing like the rough grabs she had endured from other men. His lips moved against hers with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. She leaned into him, her hands coming up to rest against his broad chest, feeling the strong beat of his heart beneath her palms. The kiss deepened, and Olivia felt something inside her unfurl like a flower opening to the sun. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "Stay with me. Not as a guest, not temporarily. Stay as my wife, if you will have me. I know it is fast, maybe too fast, but I have never been more certain of anything in my life." "Yes." The word came without hesitation. "Yes, Nathan. I will stay. I will marry you." His smile was brilliant, transforming his rugged face into something beautiful. He kissed her again, then pulled her into an embrace that made her feel safer than she ever had in her life. She fit against his large frame perfectly, her head tucked under his chin, his powerful arms wrapped around her. They talked long into the night, sharing more of their pasts, their hopes and fears. Nathan told her about his family in Missouri, about parents who had died while he was at war, about a younger sister who had married a shopkeeper and moved to California. Olivia shared the pain of her childhood, the string of menial jobs, the constant struggle to survive. With each revelation, they wove their stories together, creating something new from the separate threads of their lives. Finally, when the fire had burned low and exhaustion claimed them both, Nathan kissed her once more and headed to the barn. "Sleep well. Tomorrow we start planning our life together." Alone in the cabin, Olivia lay in Nathan's bed surrounded by the scent of pine and wood smoke, and felt hope bloom in her chest for the first time in years. The next weeks fell into a rhythm that felt like the most natural thing in the world. Olivia quickly learned the routines of mountain life. She tended the garden while Nathan worked on expanding the barn. She collected eggs from the chickens and learned to milk the placid cow Nathan had named Buttercup. She cooked meals over the fireplace and washed their clothes in the cold stream. And every evening, after the work was done, they continued her reading lessons by firelight. "You are progressing remarkably fast," Nathan said one evening as Olivia successfully read several pages from a novel without assistance. "At this rate, you will be reading better than most townspeople within a few months." "I have an excellent teacher," Olivia smiled at him over the book, "and strong motivation." "What is your motivation?" "I want to read the same books you love. I want to understand the words that shaped you." She paused, then added softly, "And someday, I want to read to our children." The look Nathan gave her was so full of love and longing that Olivia's breath caught. These past weeks, they had maintained propriety despite sharing close quarters. Nathan continued sleeping in the barn, though they spent every possible moment together during the day. Their physical affection was limited to kisses and embraces, both of them waiting for marriage vows before taking things further. But the desire between them was a palpable thing, growing stronger each day. "We should go to town soon," Nathan said, his voice rough. "Find a preacher or a judge. I do not want to wait much longer to make you my wife properly." I was thinking the same thing. They made the trip to Shoshone City 3 days later, both dressed in their best clothes. Nathan had shaved for the occasion, and Olivia had braided her hair with ribbons. In town, they went first to the land office where Nathan filed papers officially claiming his homestead, listing Olivia as his intended wife. Then they sought out the circuit judge who handled civil matters. Judge Blackwell was a kindly older man who asked them a few questions about their intentions, satisfied himself that both were of age and entering the marriage freely, and agreed to perform the ceremony that very afternoon. "Do you have witnesses?" he asked. Nathan's expression darkened. "We are new to town and do not have friends here yet." The judge's wife, who had been listening from the doorway, stepped forward with a warm smile. "Gerald and I would be happy to serve as witnesses. It is not every day we see a couple so clearly in love. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. Standing in the judge's parlor with sunshine streaming through the windows, Olivia and Nathan exchanged vows. Nathan's voice was steady and sure as he promised to love and cherish her all his days. Olivia's hands trembled as she made her own vows, scarcely believing this mountain man was now her husband. When Judge Blackwell pronounced them married and told Nathan he could kiss his bride, Nathan swept Olivia into his arms and kissed her with a passion tempered only slightly by their audience. Mrs. Blackwell laughed with delight, and even the judge seemed charmed. They completed the paperwork, paid the fee, and emerged into the afternoon sunshine as husband and wife. Nathan lifted Olivia into the wagon with his powerful arms, then climbed up beside her. As they began the journey back to the cabin, he took her hand in his. "Mrs. Zimmerman," he said, testing out the name. "I like the sound of that." Olivia leaned against his solid shoulder, feeling happiness bubble up inside her like spring water. The ride back seemed both too long and too short. Olivia was intensely aware that everything was about to change. Tonight Nathan would not be sleeping in the barn. Tonight they would truly become husband and wife in every sense. Anticipation and nervousness warred within her. Nathan seemed to sense her thoughts. He squeezed her hand reassuringly. "We will take everything at your pace. No rush, no pressure. I trust you completely." When they reached the cabin, evening was falling. Nathan unhitched the wagon and tended the horses while Olivia went inside to prepare dinner. But she found herself too excited to focus on cooking. Instead, she tidied the already clean cabin, changed the bed linens to the best set Nathan owned, and tried to calm her racing heart. Nathan came in as the last light faded from the sky. He had washed at the stream, his hair damp and slicked back, his shirt clean. He stood in the doorway for a moment, just looking at her, and the expression on his face made Olivia's knees weak. "You're the most beautiful thing I have ever seen," he said quietly. "Even covered in flour that first day?" "Especially then." Nathan crossed the room to her, each step deliberate. "You were so brave, so determined not to show how much they hurt you. I fell in love with you in that moment, I think. Everything since has just confirmed what I knew then." "I love you too," Olivia whispered. "I did not know I was capable of feeling this much." Nathan cupped her face in his large hands, his thumbs stroking her cheeks with incredible gentleness. "Are you certain about this? About me? Because once I have you, Olivia, I will never let you go." "I am certain. I have never been more certain of anything." He kissed her then, deeply and thoroughly, his arms coming around her to pull her close. Olivia melted into him, her hands sliding up to tangle in his long hair. The kiss went on, years of loneliness and longing pouring out of both of them. Nathan picked her up as if she weighed nothing, cradling her against his muscled chest as he carried her to the bed. He laid her down gently, then straightened to pull off his shirt. In the lamplight, Olivia could see the full expanse of his powerful torso, the muscles that came from years of hard labor, the scars from war and wilderness. He was magnificent and a little intimidating, but when she looked into his eyes, she saw only love and tenderness. That night, by the light of the fire, Nathan made love to his new wife with a patience and care that erased all her fears. He was gentle but passionate, attentive to her every response, making sure her pleasure matched his own. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the bed, Olivia's head on Nathan's broad chest, listening to his heartbeat slow. "Worth waiting for?" Nathan murmured, his fingers trailing up and down her bare back. "Worth everything." Olivia pressed a kiss to his chest. "I never imagined I could feel this way. This safe, this loved. You are safe and you are loved. For the rest of our lives, Olivia. I promise you that." They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, and when Olivia woke in the morning to find Nathan still beside her, his arm possessive around her waist, she felt a joy so complete it brought tears to her eyes. The next months were the happiest of Olivia's life. She threw herself into learning everything about mountain living. Nathan taught her to shoot, starting with a small rifle for small game. She proved to have a natural eye, and soon she was contributing to their food stores with rabbits and grouse. She learned to preserve vegetables from the garden, to make butter and cheese from Buttercup's milk, to recognize edible wild plants in the forest. and every evening they continued her reading lessons. But now they were husband and wife, sitting close together by the fire, Nathan's arm around her shoulders as they worked through increasingly difficult texts. Olivia progressed from primers to novels, from simple sentences to complex ideas. Nathan's mother's collection of books became Olivia's treasures, and she devoured each one hungrily. "I have been thinking," Nathan said one evening as they finished a particularly engaging chapter, "we should order more books from a catalog. Build up our library for you." "That would be wonderful, but books are expensive. I do well enough with my trapping and trading. Besides, what better way to spend money than on something that brings you joy?" Summer arrived in full glory, transforming the high meadow into a riot of wildflowers. Olivia spent long days in the garden, which was producing abundantly under her care. She had a knack for growing things, Nathan observed, watching her work with obvious appreciation. She had filled out in the months since leaving town, her figure becoming more rounded with good food and happiness. One evening in late July, as they sat on the cabin steps watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple, Nathan pulled Olivia close and said, "I have something I want to discuss with you." "That sounds serious." But Olivia was smiling, content in his embrace. "I want to expand the cabin before winter, add another room, maybe two, make it a real home." "It is already a real home. I mean a home for a family." Nathan's hand moved to rest on her stomach. "I'm hoping we will need the extra space before too long." Olivia covered his hand with hers, emotion welling up in her throat. They had not explicitly discussed children, but the hope had been present in every aspect of their life together. "I hope so too. Then we start building tomorrow. I want everything ready." Nathan threw himself into the expansion with typical intensity. He selected and felled trees from the forest, stripped and notched the logs, and began laying the foundation for a new section of the cabin. Olivia helped where she could, though Nathan was careful not to let her do anything too strenuous. "I am not made of glass," she protested one day when he insisted she rest in the shade. "No, but you are precious, and I will not risk you getting hurt." Nathan kissed her forehead. "Let me do the heavy work. You focus on keeping us fed and rested." By early autumn, the expansion was complete. The cabin now had 2 additional rooms, one that could serve as a bedroom or study, and another that Nathan called the nursery, though he tried to be casual about it. Olivia furnished the rooms with handmade pieces Nathan crafted and quilts she sewed during the long summer evenings. The cabin felt truly like a home now, a place ready for a future. As the leaves turned gold and the air took on a crisp edge, Olivia began to suspect that future was arriving sooner than expected. Her monthly courses had not come, and she felt a peculiar combination of exhaustion and energy. She said nothing to Nathan at first, wanting to be certain, but when another month passed and the signs became undeniable, she could no longer contain her joy. She chose to tell him one evening after a particularly good dinner. Nathan was sitting by the fire, reading aloud from a novel they had been working through together, when Olivia stopped him with a hand on his arm. "Nathan, there is something I need to tell you." He set down the book immediately, his expression concerned. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I am more than all right. I'm expecting a baby." For a moment, Nathan sat frozen, as if his mind could not quite process her words. Then a smile broke across his face, so wide and joyful that it transformed him. "Truly? You're certain?" "As certain as I can be. I think the baby will come in late spring, maybe May." Nathan let out a whoop of pure joy and swept Olivia into his arms, spinning her around the cabin before setting her down gently, suddenly worried he might hurt her. His large hands came to rest on her stomach, still flat but carrying their child. "A baby," he breathed. "Our baby. Olivia, you have made me the happiest man alive. We made this together." Olivia covered his hands with hers. "This baby will be born out of love, raised in a real home with parents who want them more than anything. Parents who will teach them to read and write and think," Nathan added. "Parents who will never let them feel worthless or stupid or unwanted." They held each other by the firelight, 2 people who had found each other against all odds, now preparing to bring new life into the world. Winter in the high country was fierce and isolating. Snow piled up until it reached the cabin windows, and the temperature dropped until the water in the basin froze solid overnight. But inside the cabin, warmth and contentment reigned. Nathan had prepared thoroughly, with enough firewood to last until spring, stores of preserved food, and supplies for any emergency. Olivia's pregnancy progressed well despite her initial concerns. Nathan doted on her, insisting she rest frequently, making sure she ate well, rubbing her feet when they swelled. He talked to her growing belly, telling the baby about the world waiting outside, about the mountains and forests and streams they would explore together. "You will have the best mother in the world," he told the baby one snowy evening, his hand spread across Olivia's round stomach. "She is brave and smart and kind, and she will teach you to love learning the way someone once taught her." During the long winter evenings, they continued their reading lessons, though now Olivia often did more of the reading than Nathan. She had progressed to the point where she could work through most books independently, asking Nathan for help only with particularly challenging words. His pride in her accomplishment was evident every time he watched her lose herself in a story. "Do you remember when you thought you could never learn?" Nathan asked one night. "I remember being terrified of trying and failing," Olivia admitted. "I remember thinking I was too old, too stupid, too far behind. And now? Now I know that it is never too late to learn. That stupidity and ignorance are not the same thing. That with the right teacher and enough determination, anything is possible." She smiled at him over her book. "You gave me that. You gave me the confidence to believe in myself. You always had that confidence. I just helped you find it." As winter slowly gave way to spring, Olivia grew larger and more uncomfortable. Nathan became increasingly protective, barely letting her out of his sight. He arranged their bedroom so everything she might need was within easy reach. He practiced the things the medical text he had ordered said he might need to do when the baby came, since they were too far from town to fetch a doctor or midwife. "I am scared," Olivia admitted one night as her time drew near. "What if something goes wrong?" "Nothing will go wrong," Nathan said with a conviction he did not entirely feel. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. You are strong and healthy. Our baby is active and growing well. Everything will be fine. Promise me that if you have to choose, you will save the baby." "Olivia, do not talk like that. Promise me, Nathan, a child should not lose their mother, but you could find another wife. The baby needs you more than I do." Nathan pulled her into his arms, his voice fierce. "I will not be finding another wife because I will not lose you. Both of you are coming through this healthy and whole, and we are going to raise this baby together. That is the only outcome I will accept." When labor began on a warm May morning, Nathan went into action with calm efficiency that masked his terror. He had set up everything according to the medical text, boiled water, gathered clean linens, prepared the cradle they had made together. As Olivia's contractions intensified, he supported her, encouraged her, and silently prayed to any god who might be listening to keep his wife safe. The labor was long and difficult. Olivia was strong, but this was her first child, and her body fought every step of the process. Nathan wiped her forehead, held her hand, and wished desperately that he could take her pain onto himself. He had faced bullets and bayonets in the war without flinching, but watching his wife suffer nearly undid him. Finally, as the sun began to set, filling the cabin with golden light, Olivia gave one final push, and their baby entered the world with a lusty cry. Nathan caught the infant with shaking hands, overwhelmed by the tiny, perfect life he held. A son. They had a son. "Is the baby all right?" Olivia gasped, exhausted. "He is perfect." Nathan's voice broke with emotion. "You did it, Olivia. You brought our son into the world." He cleaned the baby quickly and laid him on Olivia's chest, watching her face transform as she looked at their child for the first time. The baby had dark hair like Nathan and seemed to have his father's blue eyes, though it was hard to tell. He was small but healthy, with strong lungs and grasping fingers. "Hello, little one," Olivia whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We have waited so long to meet you." "What should we name him?" Nathan asked, unable to look away from his wife and son. I have been thinking about that." "What was your father's name?" "Noah Zimmerman." "Then our son is Noah Barrett Zimmerman, carrying both our families forward." Over the next weeks, Olivia recovered while Nathan took over all the household duties and most of the baby care when Olivia was not nursing. He proved to be a natural father, his large hands surprisingly gentle as he changed Noah's nappies and rocked him to sleep. He talked to the baby constantly, telling him about the world outside, singing old songs his mother had taught him, reading aloud from books. "You are going to confuse him. Reading Shakespeare to an infant," Olivia said with amusement, watching Nathan hold their son while working through a particularly dense passage. "Never too early to start his education," Nathan replied seriously. "Besides, he seems to like the sound of it. Look how attentive he is." Noah, who was likely just staring at nothing as newborns did, appeared to gaze at his father with what Nathan chose to interpret as deep interest. As spring turned to summer, Noah grew from a tiny newborn into a chubby, alert baby who smiled at his parents and grabbed everything within reach. Olivia's love for her son was all-consuming, but she made sure to carve out time for her reading practice and for nurturing her relationship with Nathan. The nights when Noah slept peacefully, she and Nathan would sit by the fire, sometimes reading, sometimes just talking, always connected. "Do you ever miss town?" Nathan asked one evening. "The company of other women, the conveniences?" Olivia considered the question seriously. "Sometimes I think it would be nice to have another woman to talk to about motherhood things, and I would not mind a mercantile closer than a day's ride. But Miss Shoshone City itself, the people who mocked me, the tiny room and endless labor? No, I would not trade this life for anything. We could move closer to town if you wanted. I could find land nearer to civilization. This is our home, Nathan. This is where we built our life together. I would not change it." When Noah was 6 months old, they made their first trip to Shoshone City as a family. Olivia was nervous about facing the town that had witnessed her humiliation, but Nathan's solid presence beside her gave her courage. They had business at the land office and needed supplies that could not be obtained at the trading post. The town had changed little in the year since Olivia left, but Olivia herself had changed dramatically. She was no longer the cowering servant girl who could not read. She was a wife and mother, a woman who managed a mountain homestead, who could read complex books and shoot game and grow enough food to feed her family. She held her head high as they walked down the main street, Noah in her arms and Nathan at her side. They ran into Martha Henderson outside the mercantile. The older woman's eyes widened with recognition and something that might have been shame. Olivia Barrett, or I suppose it is something else now. "Olivia Zimmerman," Olivia said calmly. "This is my husband Nathan and our son Noah." Martha's gaze traveled over Nathan's imposing form, the quality of their clothes, the healthy baby, and Olivia's confident bearing. "You seem to be doing well for yourself." "I am doing wonderfully, thank you." Olivia did not elaborate. This woman did not deserve to know the happiness she had found. Inside the mercantile, Mr. Henderson served them with careful politeness. When Nathan requested several books from a catalog, mentioning that his wife was an avid reader, Olivia saw the surprise on the shopkeeper's face. She simply smiled and said nothing. Let them wonder how the illiterate servant girl learned to read. They stayed in town overnight at the hotel, then headed back to the mountain with their supplies. As they climbed into the high country, Olivia felt her spirits lift. The mountains were calling her home. The years that followed were full and rich. Noah grew into a sturdy toddler who adored following his father around the homestead. Nathan built him a small wagon and carved him toys during the winter months. Olivia taught him his letters almost as soon as he could talk, using the same primer Nathan had used with her. When Noah was 3, Olivia discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was easier, her body knowing what to expect. Their daughter was born on a snowy December morning, arriving faster than Noah had. She had Olivia's features and Nathan's blue eyes, and they named her Nora after Nathan's mother. With 2 small children, the cabin that had seemed spacious became crowded. Nathan began planning another expansion, this time adding a proper second floor with bedrooms for the children. The project took the better part of a year, but when it was finished, they had a true family home with space for everyone. Olivia's reading continued to improve until she was reading as well as anyone with formal education. She ordered books regularly now, building an impressive library that filled multiple shelves in their expanded cabin. She read to Noah and Nora every evening, passing on the gift Nathan had given her. Both children learned to read young, soaking up knowledge like sponges. When Noah was 7 and Nora 4, They began making regular trips to Shoshone City, no longer isolated by necessity, but by choice. The town had grown, and attitudes had shifted somewhat. Olivia was now known as Nathan Zimmerman's wife, the educated woman who ran a mountain homestead and raised bright children. If anyone remembered the mockery from years ago, they were wise enough not to mention it. Olivia sometimes worked with the new school teacher, helping students who struggled with reading. She had a particular gift for reaching children who had been told they were stupid or slow. She would sit with them patiently, using the same techniques Nathan had used with her, and watch them bloom as they realized they could learn. "You have a calling," Nathan told her one evening after she returned from a particularly successful session with a struggling student. "You could teach full-time if you wanted. I prefer teaching our own children and helping when I can. This life we have built, it is enough for me. More than enough." Life in the mountains had its challenges. There were harsh winters when they were snowed in for weeks. There were illnesses and injuries that had to be treated without a doctor. There were droughts that threatened the garden and predators that stalked the livestock. But through it all, Nathan and Olivia faced everything together, their love deepening with each passing year. When Noah was 10 and Nora 7, Olivia discovered she was pregnant once more. This pregnancy was harder than the previous two, and Nathan worried constantly. But when their second son was born, healthy and strong on a warm June morning, relief and joy overwhelmed them both. They named him Nathaniel after his father, though they called him Nate. 3 children filled the cabin with noise and laughter and love. Nathan taught all of them to shoot, to track, to read the forest and mountains. Olivia taught them to read and write and cipher, to cook and garden and preserve food. Together, they created a family bound not just by blood, but by shared purpose and deep affection. On quiet evenings when the children were asleep, Nathan and Olivia would sit by the fire as they had from the beginning. Sometimes they read together from their growing library. Sometimes they worked on projects, Nathan carving or repairing tools while Olivia sewed or mended. Sometimes they just talked, sharing thoughts and dreams and memories. "Do you remember the first night I came to the line shack?" Olivia asked one such evening. "I was so scared and so desperate." "I remember thinking you were the bravest person I had ever met," Nathan replied, "coming alone to meet a stranger just for the chance to learn. I never imagined it would lead to this, to you, to our children, to this life." "I knew," Nathan pulled her close, his arm heavy and warm around her shoulders. "I knew from the moment I saw you that you were going to change my life. I just did not realize how completely or how wonderfully." "The mountain man and the illiterate servant girl," Olivia said with a soft laugh. "Not exactly a fairy tale beginning." "The best stories never are." Nathan kissed the top of her head. "The best stories are about real people who find each other against the odds and build something beautiful together." As the years passed, Noah grew into a young man much like his father, tall and strong with a love for the mountains. He talked about claiming his own land nearby, building his own homestead. Nora became passionate about books and teaching, already helping her younger brother with his lessons. Young Nate was still finding his way, but he had his father's quiet strength and his mother's determination. When Noah was 18 and preparing to file for his own land claim, the family made a trip to Shoshone City together. The town had grown substantially, now sporting a proper school, several churches, and even a small library. Olivia visited the library with wonder, remembering the girl who could not read a single word. The librarian, a young woman new to town, showed Olivia the collection with pride. "Do you read much, Mrs. Zimmerman?" "Every chance I get," Olivia replied. "I came to reading later in life than most, but it changed everything for me." "How did you learn?" Olivia glanced over to where Nathan stood with their children, looking at a display of maps. "My husband taught me. By firelight up in the mountains, best education I ever could have received." That evening, back at the hotel, the whole family gathered in their rooms. Noah was excited about his plans, Nora was full of stories from the library, and young Nate had made friends with some town boys. Nathan watched them all with evident satisfaction, his hand finding Olivia's and holding it tight. Later, when the children had finally settled for the night, Nathan and Olivia stood at the window of their room, looking out at the mountains silhouetted against the starry sky. "Those mountains saved me," Nathan said quietly. After the war, I was broken. I thought the solitude would be enough, but it was not until I came down from the mountain and found you that I truly started living again. You saved me too, Olivia replied. Not just by teaching me to read, though, that was the beginning. You saved me by showing me I was worthy of love and respect. You gave me a home and a family and a future I never dared dream about. We saved each other then, and built something neither of us could have built alone. They stood together in comfortable silence, two people who had found each other in the hardest of circumstances and created a love story for the ages. The journey from that first meeting in Shoshone City to this moment had been filled with challenges and triumphs, fears and joys. But through it all, they had faced everything together, bound by the love that had begun by firelight over reading lessons and grown into something unshakable. As they prepared for bed, Olivia picked up the worn primer that had started it all. She kept it always, a reminder of where they had begun. Nathan saw her holding it and smiled. Do you remember the first night I brought that to the line shack? How nervous you were. I remember thinking I would never be able to learn, that I was too old and too stupid. And now you have read more books than most people in this territory. You have taught hundreds of children to read. You have built a library that would make my mother proud. Olivia set down the primer and moved into her husband's embrace. I have done all those things because you believed in me first, because you saw past the frightened servant girl to the person I could become. Nathan held her close, his voice rough with emotion. I saw who you always were, Olivia. You just needed someone to help you see it too. They kissed, the passion between them as strong as it had been on their wedding night years ago. Age and time had not diminished their desire for each other, had only deepened the connection between them. The next morning, the family began the journey back to the mountain homestead. As they climbed into the high country, passing through forests and meadows now deeply familiar, Olivia felt the same sense of homecoming she always did. The cabin came into view, solid and welcoming, smoke rising from the chimney where they had left a fire banked in the stove. This was home. Not just the cabin, but the life they had built within it. The love that had started with simple reading lessons had grown into something profound and lasting. They had created a family, a legacy, a story that would be told by their children and their children's children. That evening, after dinner had been eaten and cleaned up, after the children had been put to bed with stories and kisses, Nathan and Olivia sat by the fire as they had done countless times before. But tonight, Olivia had a surprise. She pulled out a leather-bound journal, brand new and empty. What is this? Nathan asked. I have been thinking, Olivia said. We have a story worth preserving. How we met, how you taught me to read, how we built this life together. I want to write it down so our children and grandchildren will know. Will you help me? You can tell your parts, and I will write them down along with mine. Nathan's eyes grew bright with emotion. I would be honored. So they began, taking turns telling their story while Olivia wrote it down in her now confident hand. They started with that day in the mercantile, with flower dust and mockery, and a mountain man who saw past surface shame to the woman beneath. They moved through the reading lessons by firelight in the old line shack, through their hasty courtship and marriage, through the building of their homestead, and the birth of their children. It took weeks to complete, writing for an hour or two each evening after the day's work was done. When they finally finished, Olivia read the entire story aloud to Nathan while he listened with tears in his eyes. It is beautiful, he said when she finished, just like the life we lived. We are still living it, Olivia reminded him. This story does not end here. We have years yet ahead of us. And they did. Years of watching their children grow and start families of their own. Years of welcoming grandchildren who learn to read on their grandparents' laps. Years of continued growth and learning because Olivia never stopped reading and Nathan never stopped teaching her new things. On their 25th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a celebration at the homestead. All three were there with their own families. Noah had indeed claimed land nearby and built a fine home for his wife and their two children. Nora had married a teacher and worked at the school in Shoshone City, coming to visit as often as she could with her young daughter. Nate had decided ranching was his calling and was building a herd on the far side of the meadow. The homestead rang with laughter and love as 3 generations of Zimmermans celebrated together. After dinner, Noah stood to make a toast. "To my parents," he said, raising his glass. "You taught us that education is not about where you start, but about having the courage to learn. You showed us that love is not about grand gestures, but about showing up every day and choosing each other again and again. You built a legacy in these mountains, and we are all better for being part of it." Everyone drank to that, and then Nora added her own words. "When I teach children who struggle to read, I tell them about my mother, how she could not read a single word when she was 23, but she learned because she had the courage to try and because she had someone who believed in her. Her story gives hope to every student who thinks they cannot learn. Thank you, Mama and Papa, for showing us what is possible." Young Nate, always more comfortable with actions than words, simply hugged both his parents fiercely and whispered, "I love you both. Thank you for everything." That night, after the celebration had ended and the family had departed to their own homes, Nathan and Olivia sat on their porch watching the stars. The mountains rose around them, eternal and strong, and the cabin behind them held the memories of 25 years of marriage. "If you could go back," Nathan asked, "to that day in the mercantile, knowing everything that would happen, would you change anything?" Olivia considered the question seriously. "I would not want to experience that humiliation again. But if I had to go through it to end up here with you, I would do it 1,000 times over." Nathan pulled her close, and they sat together in the darkness, surrounded by the life they had built. A life that had started with mockery and shame, but had transformed into something beautiful through patience, love, and the simple act of teaching someone to read by firelight. Years later, when Olivia was an old woman with silver hair and lines around her eyes, she still read every day. Her library had grown to fill an entire room in the expanded cabin. She still helped struggling students in town, though she moved more slowly now. And she still sat by the fire every evening with Nathan, whose hair was white, but whose blue eyes still held the same love and warmth that they had shown on that first night at the line shack. On a cold winter evening, when they were both well into their 70s, they sat together wrapped in quilts, watching the fire. Olivia was reading aloud from a new novel that had arrived in the mail, her voice still strong despite her age. Nathan listened with his eyes closed, holding her hand. When she finished the chapter, she closed the book and looked at her husband. "Nathan, are you awake?" "I'm listening," he assured her. "I love hearing you read. I always have." "Do you remember teaching me? How patient you were?" "Best thing I ever did," Nathan replied. "Well, second best. The first was marrying you." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Olivia said, "I've been thinking about that day in the mercantile. How the worst day of my life led to all this. How shame and mockery led to love and family and a life beyond my wildest dreams." "The world is full of cruel people," Nathan said, "but it is also full of possibility. You just need someone to show you the way sometimes." "You were my someone. And you were mine." Nathan squeezed her hand gently. "I was so lost before I found you, Olivia. I thought hiding in the mountains was the answer, but it was just running away. You gave me a reason to come down from the mountain. You gave me a reason to live again." As the fire burned low, they made their way to bed, moving with the careful synchronization of a couple who had spent decades together. They had faced everything life could throw at them and had emerged stronger for it. They had built a family, a home, and a love that would outlast them both. Olivia Zimmerman, who had once been mocked for not being able to read a single word, now owned over 500 books. She had taught scores of children to read, had written her own story, and had proven that it is never too late to learn and grow and change. She had gone from a frightened, shamed servant girl to a confident, educated woman with a loving family and a rich life. And it had all started with a mountain man who saw her worth when no one else did, who taught her to read by firelight, and who loved her with a steadiness and devotion that never wavered. In the small graveyard on the homestead property, years later, 2 headstones would stand side by side. Nathan Zimmerman and Olivia Barrett Zimmerman, husband and wife, together even in death as they had been in life. Their children and grandchildren would visit, bringing flowers and stories, keeping their memory alive. But that ending was still far in the future. For now, on this winter night, they slept peacefully in each other's arms, grateful for every moment they had been given. The fire burned down to embers, casting warm light across the cabin that held so much love, so many memories, so much life. Outside, snow fell softly over the mountains, covering everything in white. The world slept, peaceful and quiet. And in the cabin in the meadow, the mountain man and his wife dreamed of the next day's adventures, of books yet to be read, of grandchildren yet to visit, of all the beautiful ordinary moments that made up a life well lived. Their story, which had begun with mockery and ended in triumph, would be told for generations. The story of the woman who could not read and the man who taught her by firelight. The story of how love can transform everything, how patience can work miracles, and how two broken people can heal each other and build something lasting and true. And in the journal Olivia had written all those years ago, carefully preserved and passed down through the family, the final words read simply, "We built a life from nothing but love and determination. We faced every challenge together, and we proved that it is never too late to learn, to grow, to become who you were meant to be. This is our legacy. Choose love, choose learning, choose each other. Always." The story of Nathan and Olivia Zimmerman became legend in those mountains. Young couples would look at their enduring homestead and aspire to build something as lasting. Struggling students would hear of the woman who learned to read at 23 and find courage to keep trying. And anyone who had ever felt worthless or stupid or beyond help would remember that once, in the Wild West of 1876, a mountain man taught a mocked servant girl to read by firelight, and in doing so, changed both their lives forever. Their love story was not one of grand gestures or dramatic rescues, though Nathan had certainly rescued Olivia from a desperate situation. Instead, it was a story of quiet devotion, daily choices, and the transformative power of believing in someone when they could not believe in themselves. It was a story of finding home in another person, of building a life one careful lesson at a time, of facing the world together and emerging victorious. And so, in a cabin in the mountains of Idaho, surrounded by books and love and family, Nathan and Olivia Zimmerman lived out their days in contentment and joy. They had started with nothing but each other and had built an empire of love that would last generations. They had proven that the best love stories are not about perfection, but about two imperfect people who choose each other every single day. The firelight that had illuminated Olivia's first halting attempts at reading became a symbol of their love, warm, steady, illuminating, and enduring. And like that firelight, their love never flickered, never faded, but burned true and bright until the very end of their days and beyond, lighting the way for all who came after them.